Alright guys, today I'm going to be bringing you a video that is going to be going over the Plastinated Heart. I know it's hard sometimes to have enough time to spend with the Plastinated Heart, added on the fact that you can't bring it home and you can only see it in lab. So I wanted to bring a video to kind of break it down, go over the pathway of blood through the heart, and go over some of the key structures that are on the content list and try to make it make sense a little bit more so you guys can have a better conceptual understanding of the heart in general. So what I'm going to do is start with the first two structures on the content list. We have the right and the left auricle. So right auricle, left auricle. If you're thinking about the heart, right? So you're kind of seeing this video from a superior perspective, right? So imagine if you're looking at the top of somebody's head, right, from above them, right? So the heart would be positioned, the apex of the heart would be positioned towards the left, right? It's pointed towards the left, and your heart would be tilted slightly back. Right, so this would kind of be how your heart is positioned right inside of your body, right? So down to the left and slightly back. So when we're looking at it like this, right? So we already went over the auricles. Now I'm going to move on to the aorta. Right, so with the aorta, you can see the arch of the aorta here, right? The ascending and then the descending aorta. So off of the ascending aorta, we have a couple of different structures that we need to know. So the first structure is going to be the brachiocephalic trunk, right? So this is the brachiocephalic trunk. The brachiocephalic trunk splits into the right subclavian artery and the right common carotid artery. So we have ascending aorta, right off of the arch of the aorta, we have the brachiocephalic, which splits into the right subclavian, and it also splits into the right common carotid. And then we move on further down the arch. You have the left common carotid artery, and then you have the left subclavian. Right. So now that we have those down, we can move forward to the next structures. So the next thing on the content sheets would be the pulmonary trunk. So if we look right under the arch of the aorta, you see the pulmonary trunk. Right, this is the pulmonary trunk right under the arch of the aorta. And then coming off the pulmonary trunk, you have the pulmonary arteries. So the pulmonary trunk, just one artery, which splits into a right and a left pulmonary artery. So right, this would be the left pulmonary artery. Right, if I look back here, right, this would be the right one. Right, inside of there would be the right one. So we have the pulmonary artery. Now we can move on to the superior and inferior vena cava. Right, so we have the superior vena cava, which is right here. So superior vena cava, this structure right here. All right, if we're looking like that, right, this is the superior vena cava right here. Right, we're looking for the inferior vena cava. This is the inferior vena cava. So are you looking at the heart position like this? This is the bottom there. So superior, inferior, and if I put a probe through them, they actually connect. Right, superior vena cava, right, connects to inferior vena cava, and you can see the probe go directly through it. We also have the pulmonary veins. So if you look at the posterior aspect of the heart, you see the pulmonary veins here. A lot of people get it confused with superior, inferior vena cava, but the pulmonary veins go into the left atria. So pulmonary veins, right? It's usually 4 veins, 4 more veins. So you can see 1, 2, and then if I turn the heart around, you can see these 2 right here, 3, and then 4. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and then 3, and 4, right there. So we have those. Now we can move on to the coronary arteries. So coming off of the aorta, we have 2 arteries, right? So coronary artery is the circulation that's actually supplying the heart itself. So the heart is supplying blood to the body, right? It's supplying blood to the body, but it needs blood to actually supply the muscle itself that's contracting and beating and maintaining life. So coming off of the aorta, we have the right coronary artery, and then we have the left coronary artery back there. We can't really see it too well, right? The plastinated pulmonary trunk is covering it, but I'm trying to give you a better perspective to where you can see it. If I like turn it like that, right, you can see like the pulmonary trunk is right here, but the left coronary artery is all the way back there being covered. So even if I turn it this way, you can't really see it too well, but just know it's all the way back there. It's all the way back there behind the left auricle. But yeah, so coming off of the right coronary artery, right, it wraps around all the way and goes to the posterior side of the heart. So right coronary artery is right here. It wraps around, 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 and then it gives off a branch to form this posterior interventricular artery. Right, and then if we move on to the left coronary artery, you can't really see it that well, but the left coronary artery branches into the anterior interventricular artery. And all interventricular means is that it's going in between the two ventricles. And then coming off of the left coronary artery as well is the circumflex. So we can see the circumflex a little bit better. You can see branches of it here, right? Circumflex, right? It's still behind the left auricle there, but it's the second branch of the left coronary artery. Right, so we have anterior interventricular, circumflex. Okay, and then we also have the coronary sinus. So if we move on to the posterior aspect of the heart, and I kind of bisect it like this, right? Because this is the coronary sinus, right? This structure there, right? That I'm putting the probe through, right? So coronary sinus, it's right here. Coronary sinus, right? Very close and proximal to the right atrium. And if we move further down, we can move into the actual heart itself and start looking at some of those structures there. So, right, the one thing that I want to preface with these plastinated hearts is that the way they are cut so you can see more of the left side of the heart, right? So if I turn it around like this, right, so this is the left side of the heart, this is the right side of the heart, right? So it's cut more towards the left, so you're not seeing a lot of the structures in the right chambers. So the thing that I want to move forward with is showing you guys that you could really only see the left atrium and the left ventricle very well. So what we do, so if I open the heart like this, right, I know I'm looking at the left atrium, right? I can see the left atrium and I can see the left ventricle. And remember, since we're bisecting, right, imagine if I'm cutting a circle, or if I'm cutting a balloon, right, I'm seeing the two halves of that balloon, right? So imagine this is a balloon. Imagine the left atrium is a balloon. I'm seeing two sides of the inside of that balloon, right? So I'm seeing two sides of the left atrium, and I'm seeing two sides of the left ventricle, right? But we're cut too far to see the right, to see good portions of the right ventricle. We can still see a little piece of the right ventricle here, right? So this is still a part of the right ventricle. This is still a part of the right ventricle, but we're seeing majorly just two halves of the left ventricle and the left atrium, right? So now that we got that down, we can see that. Okay. Now that we have that down. And also I'm gonna go through the whole pathway of blood through the heart, so we're gonna see all these structures one more time. So we also have this structure here, which is the valve in between the left atrium and the left ventricle, called the bicuspid or the mitral valve. So this is the bicuspid or the mitral valve. It's been cut in half, so you're seeing two sides of the valve. We also have the chordae tendineae, which are these little strings that are attaching to the valve. And then we have the papillary muscle here, the papillary muscle, which is connected to the chordae tendineae. And then you have the muscle, right, inside of the ventricles called trabeculae carnae. Right, so trabeculae carnae, right, the muscle that is surrounding the wall of the ventricles. And then you have the papillary muscle, which are kind of these little hills, right, that connect to the chordae tendineae, which connect to the leaflets of the valve. All right, and from this structure, we can see the aortic semilunar valve. That's what we're seeing here. So this would be the aorta. So if I close this again, right, this is the aorta. We can see the ascending, and then the descending. So this structure here would have to be the aortic semilunar valve. Aortic semilunar valve, right? Right, and you can see right, all of the valves. So now that we have that down, we can't really see the pulmonary semilunar valve, and we can't see the tricuspid or the right atrioventricular valve. So we can only see the left atrioventricular valve, the mitral, and the bicuspid. Right, those are all three names for the same valve: left atrioventricular, mitral, and bicuspid. Same three structures, just different names. And then we can also see the aortic semilunar valve, but we cannot see the pulmonary semilunar valve, which would be in the, which would be closer to the cut of, closer to the cut on the right side of the heart. But we can see it slightly here. We actually can see a slight part of the valve there. That would be the pulmonary semilunar valve that we're seeing there. So we can see a slight cut of it right there. Right, but we can't really see it too well, like we can see the aortic semilunar valve. But now that we got that down, I'm going to move through the pathway of blood through the heart. We went over all of the structures that we need to know for the plastinated heart. And then I'll show you some other hearts so we can go from there and see if that's a little bit better. Just you guys seeing it from different perspectives. So to start off with blood flow in the heart, we go from systemic to pulmonary to systemic. So systemic circulation is the circulation that's coming from your entire body. So from the upper half of your body and the lower half of your body, right? That's systemic. Pulmonary circulation is the circulation that's going from the heart to the lungs to the heart. So from the body to the heart and from the heart to the body, systemic. But from the heart to the lungs to the heart, that is all pulmonary circulation. So if we start with the systemic circulation coming from the body, right, we have blood coming from the superior and the inferior vena cava going into the right atrium. So we can't see the right atrium too well, but this is the right atrium. Right, you have pectinate muscle in the right atrium. And then from the right atrium, we move through the valve in the right atrium called the tricuspid. So the tricuspid or it's also called the right atrioventricular valve. So we move through the right atrium, right? So this is the right atrium, this would be the right ventricle, right, that I'm putting my hand around. So right atrium, right ventricle, we go through the right atrioventricular valve or the tricuspid valve. And then from there, blood gets moved to the pulmonary semilunar valve, right? So, right, this is the pulmonary semilunar valve that we can see a little bit of. And then blood moves to the pulmonary semilunar valve. It then moves to the pulmonary trunk and then splits into the pulmonary arteries. And then the right and the left pulmonary arteries. So this would be the left pulmonary artery. This would be the right pulmonary artery on the other side here. All right, they split and then they go to the lungs. Right? All that blood previously that I was talking about, that was coming from the superior inferior vena cava all the way to the pulmonary trunk and the pulmonary arteries. All of that blood is deoxygenated, right? It doesn't have a large amount of oxygen as compared to the blood that comes from the lungs, right? So this blood is going to the lungs to get oxygenated. And then once it comes from the lungs and gets that oxygen, it's going to go through the pulmonary veins. So these are the pulmonary veins, right? Pulmonary veins, right? And the pulmonary veins are going to go to the left atrium, and that's what we can actually see. So we're in a place that we can actually see what's going on. So, right, the blood is coming from the pulmonary veins, right? So pulmonary veins, right? All these are pulmonary veins that we're seeing that's draining into the left atrium. So blood is now going from the left atrium to this valve here, right? This is the mitral bicuspid or left atrioventricular valve. It's going through this valve and then coming down into the left ventricle, right? We can see the left ventricle. The muscle is oftentimes bigger, right? It is bigger on the left ventricle than in the right, right? This blood needs to create enough force to pump it to the rest of the body. So it's going to go through the left ventricle here. Again, we can see the trabeculae carnae on the ventricular walls. We could also see the papillary muscles and the chordae tendineae connecting to the leaflets of the valve here. And then blood is going to be ejected through the aortic semilunar valve, right? That's this valve here, aortic semilunar valve. And then it's going to be pushed through the aorta, right? It's going to go through the ascending down to the descending, but blood is also going to move through these coronary arteries that we're seeing here, and it's going to supply the actual heart muscle. So it's going to go through the right coronary artery here, right coronary artery. It's going to come and wrap around. It's going to come down and supply the posterior interventricular artery. It's going to also go into the left coronary artery, and it's going to come down and supply the muscle, right, that the anterior interventricular artery is supplying. And it's also going to go in the circumflex, right, and supply that muscle over here. All right, and then once that blood gets used up, it's going to be going through the cardiac veins, right? It's going to be going through the cardiac veins, and all of the cardiac veins are going to drain into the coronary sinus, right? Coronary sinus. And the coronary sinus is going to drain into the right atrium, right? And then it just restarts and it goes all over again. All right, so we go from supplying the actual heart muscle with the blood from the coronary arteries, and then, right, once that oxygen gets used up, it's going to be fed through those cardiac veins, and it's going to drain into the coronary sinus and go into the right atrium. All right, so that's, right, the blood flow of the heart, and of course blood is going to go through these structures on the top, on the arch of the aorta. Right, it's going to go through the brachiocephalic trunk, it's going to go through the left common carotid and left subclavian, and it's going to supply those structures that are going, right, superior, right? And that's about it. That's everything for the heart. Right, so again, you guys could just zoom in on the video if anything is unclear. But that's the pathway through the heart, so the key structures we need to know for the plastinated heart. And I hope this was helpful.